Hi, Supriya. My name is Zainab Mwili. I am the operations manager of TribeXX Lab. And yes, it's the work that I love to do. And I am so lucky to have you on this panel. So thank you for joining me. Over to you to just introduce yourself and tell us what you do. And if you have extra points you want to add, please go ahead.
Hi, my name is Supriya Sharma, and I'm a strategy consultant by profession. However, during my leisure time, and even after taking out time from my consulting and my training, I like to be associated with the women empowerment programs. And I have been associated with several of them in Africa during my tenure there for a decade. And it was really nice to be visiting TribeX once. I visited the TribeX compound once, and it was really nice. The aura and the scheme that promotes entrepreneurship, it's very interesting. So again, I have this pleasure of being with you guys here today, and I'm happy to contribute.
Thank you so much for that introduction. So we're just going to dive straight into the topic, which is women as community builders. As you mentioned, you are a fan of TribeXX Lab. We are a community space. We are all about building women and how we can create a space where they can flourish, where they can thrive, and where we can support each other. Right. So I'm going to start with the first question about examining how the history of women serving the communities can help the Generation Z, and how, working together can create a better community for everyone. So let me know what you feel about the history of women in the community system and how that can help the Generation Z.
So if we start diving into this, the first thing that comes to mind is historical revisionism. What it means is, if you look back into the history and you read some of the scriptures, we find that they are generally written by men regarding men's activities. And what's missing out is the role of women in shaping the history of various continents on Earth. And wherever women are mentioned, they're usually mentioned in gender stereotypical roles, such as wives, daughters, mothers, or mistresses. So that's when it really breaks our heart when we look back into the history and we want to read about how women have shaped history and we don't really find something. There are excerpts, however, for example, during the World War II in 1939, when Japan attacked Pearl Harbor in the United States, and the US was pretty reluctant in giving it back, which they finally did. And that's when women literally came out of their houses and they were a part of the World War II. Do you know what Hitler said at that time? That women are meant to be staying at home, being wives, mothers, and giving birth to children. And America was condemned a lot for bringing out their women at the forefront during World War II. So that is how women have been dealt with. That's how women are looked at. However, if we really look at what women have done and what they can do, let me talk about Florence Nightingale, the great figure. She was born in Italy and in a wealthy family in Florence, which we also call Firenze in Italia. So Florence Nightingale is a great lady who actually shaped the healthcare during the war times. Now, coming from a wealthy family, when she told her family that she wanted to be a nurse and she wanted to contribute to the society in that way, she was looked down upon and her family didn't really support her. But eventually she got a chance to serve the British Army as a nurse. And that's when she made a whole contribution in revamping and refurbishing those hospitals, which weren't literally clean. If we read about it, we find there were rats and there was a lot of dirt in those hospitals where soldiers were kept. And she took help from the community and she brought everyone together to make sure that the conditions were hygienic for the soldiers and they were taken good care of as they were protecting our boundaries. And during the night, she used to go around with a lamp, making sure that everything was fine. That's when she came to be known as the lady with the lamp. That's what we read in our books, right? Florence Nightingale, the lady with the lamp. And that's the story about it. So you see how women who are seen to be tender, fragile, they can be powerful in their own way in shaping the circumstances and shaping the nation. If you talk about the business, we have people like Indra Nui. She's an Indian, and she's the chairman of the PepsiCo, which is the second largest food and beverage company in the world. And Gen Z or Gen Y, we specifically look up to her as to that is the height we can reach in business. I mean, nothing is impossible. Don't ever be taken away by the glass ceiling, by the gender disparity that we have in the workplaces. We don't have to look at it. What we have to look at is what can be done and where is that way that we can make for ourselves, and how can we support the fellow women in our workplaces and places around us. So I think we have a lot to learn as Gen Z and Gen Y from these women who have made a mark in the history as to.
Thank you, Supriya, for that loaded history. Just as you mentioned, we also have examples of Nigerian women who do a lot of great things and who bring women together. I'm going to speak in the contemporary terms now. For example, Tribex Lab, we are a community of women. And the way that we support the Generation Z is that, first of all, we employ them. I'm an example, yes, of someone that has benefited from such what's the word, such act. And then we have people like, groups like Shillings Africa who do the same thing. And I think the way that you can really help the Generation Z is to actually bring them on the table. The idea of like not being able to, you just left school and not being able to find a good job, a job where in a place that is conducive, that you feel like you can thrive, or you can flourish. I think a great way that can happen, that you can flourish, is to work in a community space that hear you, that support you, and just always rooting for you. It just gives you that aura of encouragement to be yourself and to something to look up to and also to emulate. So thank you for your thoughts on that. We're going to move straight up to the second question, which is talking about exchanging ideas on how we can encourage women to speak up and organize for change. Recently, a lot has been going on concerning rape, particularly in Nigeria. And we've seen cases of women coming together, coming to rally. And because of such rallies, there's been a declaration of a state of an emergency in Nigeria in terms of rape, and also just yesterday, there was a sexual harassment bill that was passed in Lagos. It just shows, or in Nigeria, it just shows that a lot can happen from organized change and women speaking up and standing up for themselves. What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. Thanks, Anna, for bringing that point up. I was reading in the newspaper how domestic violence has been on the rise, not only in Nigeria, but across the globe during the pandemic scenes, when we were all allowed to just stay inside and not go out. And it's, again, heartbreaking that 90% of the women, they suffer violence of some kind in their life at some point or the other. And 72% of them refuse to speak about that. So that's us. We are facing something, we are going through something, but 70% of us, 72% of us, we don't want to speak about it. Why is that? I mean, there could be several reasons, and society could be one of the biggest reasons of that. But society should not let us keep the things within. We need to speak about it. We need to let others know. We need to educate our fellow women. We need to come together as a platform, just like you mentioned, how they did it in Nigeria and how the state of emergency was declared. That's an achievement in itself that shows that women are willing to speak up now and they are willing to come together. And this is not only about making a change in the way society thinks, it's about making a change in our own mindset. The belief in ourselves that when women come together, great things can happen. We shouldn't be thinking, oh, we are women and we are supposed to be dealt with in this manner. And that's how it has been in the past, and that's how it is now, and that's how it's going to be in the future. And we have that inertia, which makes us not to speak about it. We are scared of something. We feel, oh, nothing's going to change. But you have just spoken about it. Things have changed and things will change. And education, I think, is a major component of bringing about this change. You know, when you educate a woman, you're educating the entire family and you're educating the generations. And education, of course, is among one of the very important sustainable development goals of the United Nations. And when we talk about education and spreading that desire to learn and coming out of our houses and helping improve the poverty conditions of our country or the economic conditions of our society. You know, education is not only about, okay, learning good things and doing great jobs and earning money. No, we are not just doing this for us and our family and our generations. We are doing this for the entire nation. And when these nations come together, we are talking about the world. So eventually, as more women will come out, as more women will get educated, it will add to solving the problems like poverty and improving the economic conditions, and at the same time, improving the social conditions. Because then we know how we need to be dealt with, what we need to teach our children. These cases of rapes that we are seeing, it's because of what the families have not been able to teach their children. It's when we educate our children how they should be behaving comes actually from education. And with this education, you would be familiar with the very famous Malala Yousafzai from Pakistan, the 14-year-old girl who was the first one to be awarded a Nobel Peace Prize at such a young age. Said before, everything requires resilience. When you'll come out for the first time, you will be shut. When you come out for the second time, you'll be shut. But when you come out for the third time, people know that you are here to stay and nobody can just push you back. That's what happened with Malala. She was shot by the soldiers of Taliban. But it was her determination and her insistence that she really wanted to study and she wanted to educate herself, after which she helped so many other women around the globe to educate themselves. That paid off. So we have to be persistent and we have to be courageous. And we don't have to look elsewhere for this courage and this persistence. The beauty is that as women, the way we've been designed is, all this exists within us. The thing is, we just need to exploit it in a positive way. And that's when we say, talking about communities, TribeX is one, She Leads Africa is another one, which I'm mentoring for. So I'm mentoring some of the entrepreneurs in She Leads Africa. You mentioned of that organization right now. And there are many other organizations around the globe. So we are creating a platform for bringing together women in business and in other respects. So we know that we can learn from each other. We can share what we go through. And we have a community which we can fall on. They have our back. And I strongly believe in this sense of commitment and coming together for women, because alone, we cannot do anything. We all need support at some point or the other. So there we are, the communities that we are forming, the way we are supporting each other, the way we stand for each other. It's no more about that catty competition that women used to be known for. It's about collaboration. So we are writing a new story altogether.
Supriya, thank you so much for those points about education. And I just want to bring you home to what's going on now. And let's just use social media. Just recently, like a couple of weeks ago, a lady called Shane Tong accused Dee Banj of raping her. And, you know, what I admire, I don't know if it's this, I don't want to talk about if it is true or not. That is not the question. That is not the topic, what we're talking about right now. The topic is the courage to speak up, to name and shame your rapist. You know, it takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of I don't know how to pray, because I'm just really thinking about it, like how hard it must have been for her to just speak up, to come out and be like, you know what, this person raped me. And I agree that education does a lot in, you know, being able to, you know, educate yourself to be able to stand up for yourself. But at the same time, you need examples. because Shaitan has spoken up about it, I'm sure a lot of girls, a lot of young girls are encouraged to speak up and say that, you know what, oh, well, Shaitan doesn't have two heads. This happened to her. This is her truth. I should be able to speak mine. So I think it's always amazing to see women coming up, because women have been so deeply enrooted in this silence culture where we just keep quiet and let things happen to us. We don't complain. We don't we don't disturb the water. We just let it slide and just get over it, you know. But now it's time for us to, you know what, this happened to me, and this is something that we should all emulate. You know, speak up when you feel uncomfortable at work. Speak up when your dad is looking at you or touching you inappropriately. Speak up when a colleague is harassing you, or speak up when if the bus driver is harassing you. Things like that, I think, is what we need to start educating people and just showing that this is possible and you can do it. It's hard, but it is something that can be done because somebody else has shown you that it can be done. And yes, someone will help you, and women out there will support you. And yes, support is important more than ever. Just as I said, Shaitan was supported by a lot of women, a lot of communities, and that is why her voice was heard. So I think that's also important. I think you have something to say to that.
Exactly. I am totally seconding what you said, that together we can be so powerful that, you know, any person can become a power of change when we are together. That's what happened in the case that you just spoke about. And it's really worth admiring the courage that the woman showed in speaking up, because had she not spoken up, nobody would have known what happened and world would have been the same. But the way she impacted other young girls who would be willing to speak up in case anything goes wrong in their lives, that's really commendable. However, what I really need to make a point here about is, and you also touched upon that, again, education. You know, in offices, in our workplaces, women are touched by men in several ways. And many a times, there are women who do not know which is the correct way and which isn't. And there could be women who might be 40, who might be 30. I mean, proper grown-ups. I'm not talking about the students. I'm talking about women who are really grown up. And they're not sure of which is the correct way and which isn't the correct way. And that is when they feel, okay, if somebody is just coming around my computer and putting a hand across my shoulder and across my arm like this, it might be fine. But then they fail to realize what could be the intention behind it. And again, what scares them to speak up is, okay, the person is their boss, and what would be the situation if they tend to speak against their boss? So one is courage, and second is, of course, education, knowing what kind of touch is right and what kind of touch is wrong. And that's what we have to give to our young girls. The girls around us, the girls we are nurturing, I mean, all the young girls around us, we need to educate them on what kind of touch is right and what kind of touch isn't right, and when is the time for them to speak up. So I think that onus lies on us. We are the torch bearers, and we need to be the role models for the other girls around us.
Based on what you just said, I think this goes back to the topic on consent. If you touch me and I do not give you the right to touch me, you should not touch me. It's as simple as that. If you hold me and I said, no, get your hands off me, you really should get your hands off me. It is the idea that our bodies are ours and you have no right over it, whoever it is. So it's a thing of consent, and that's just how it works. If you've been given permission, and I think a lot of women need to be educated, just as you mentioned, about such thing, which is consent, giving your consent. And when it is not given, you demand that the person backs off. I think that's just it. Okay, so I'm going to go on to the next topic, which is exploring the dangers of fostering competition amongst women in popular culture as a detriment to building safe communities for us. Is the question clear?
What it sounds to me is like women competing against women. What do you have to say about it?
Okay, so for a very, very long time growing up for me, I've always had this notion that, oh, having girlfriends is just too much trouble. That the guys are just a lot cooler, they're easy to handle, there is no stress, like but then girls, you just feel like, oh, they're just a lot chatty and blah, blah, blah. But growing up, I realized that that's actually not true. It's based on the movies and the talks and what has been out there and what has been put inside of me to believe that having girlfriends would just cause too much drama. Because growing up, my girlfriends have been a pillar of support. I'm not saying the guy friends are not supportive, but I think because they understand my feminine needs, they understand the things that I feel, the way I feel it. So and I do really appreciate my friends a lot more because they're just always really there for me. As I said earlier, the pillar of support. So I think for a very long time, the media has given us this misconception that girls or girl community groups are just trouble. It's just going to be about gossiping about boys, gossiping about each other, hating on each other. And that's absolutely not true. Tribex X Lab is an example. I've been here for over a year and that doesn't happen. So all I get here is support. So that just goes back to what the topic is really about. Like, is the media just trying to create like a gap or like a big ditch with women and how they communicate with each other? It's not always. I have a lot of girlfriends and I know that we are not always just bitching about each other or competing with each other. We are working together to get each other at the seats on the table. So what are your thoughts on that?
You were talking about your story, everything flashed in front of me because that's what I have gone through as well. And I realized that girlfriends can be a treasure very late. I only realized it in my early 20s. Before that, I also used to think that it's about gossiping. It's about, just wasting time. And since I never liked the topics that girls used to take up, they used to be about boys and about makeup and, fishy things. And I wasn't ever interested, which made me to keep a distance from the girlfriends in my class or in my batch whenever we were there. And I think something has to do with growing up there as a teenager or having that sense of immaturity. But as we mature, we realize that girlfriends also can be a real treasure and they can be really helpful to you. And it's not just about gossiping, like you said, it's about real work. And how did this realization come to me? This realization came to me when I attended my first all-women's course at one of the most prestigious management institutions of India, which is IIM Udaipur. And it was a course to do with entrepreneurship. And we were basically having women from all over the world. I mean, we had women from various countries who were entrepreneurs and they wanted to develop their capabilities and to get more understanding of the subject and support. So we were all together. And that was the first time that I was among so many women. And initially I felt uncomfortable, but as we progressed through the course, honestly, that is one course that I've had the maximum learning in. I mean, my perception of women just gossiping and not talking sensible things or not doing meaningful acts was so wrong. That's what I realized. And I realized that women can actually be doing so much together. They can be talking about logical things. They can be rational in their thought process. They can talk about technology. They can be talking about mechanical engineering and stuff like that. So that's when I realized that, yes, we can be working with women and we can be doing really cool things. Because it was about my school experience, one, and second, in my corporate experience, I have worked with companies where I used to be the only woman on the management team. So that was the reason for my misconception that women are a different type of species and men are a different type of species. For sure, they are. There are characterial differences between the two. But women are not always illogical and they're not always irrational. And they can do all the stuff rationally and logically that needs to be done. So, like you said, women have been known for undercutting each other, undermining each other, bitching about each other, not supporting. take this very subtle example of losing weight. I have seen women, a particular woman who's lost a good amount of weight because of her dietary lifestyle and her good exercise, is not willing to disclose it to the other woman who is actually suffering from that overweight problem. Why? Because if she also gets the idea, she might take up something. What can she take? Nobody can take anything from you. So knowledge is for sharing. I mean, if you have been able to solve a problem for yourself, you should be able to and willing to help others solve those problems for themselves as well. And that is something which I have really noticed in the past decade, that women coming together, women collaborating, women forming communities. Don't you think it has come up so much in the last decade and it wasn't there before? I am part of this beautiful forum called the Women Economic Forum, where we have women from across the world and across all the industrial segments and different kind of professions we are into. And we have this conference every year. And the beauty that comes out of this conference, the very topics that we speak on and we talk on and we discuss, it's immense. I mean, maybe I sound like a feminist now, which I wasn't 10 years back. But yeah, I enjoy being with women and I enjoy working with women. It has been really wonderful. And part of the reason is, again, what comes back to you, because we understand what we go through coming from the same biological community. We do understand what we go through. We know what our thought process is. We know what our psychological processes are. And we also know what our physiological processes are. Not that men do not know, they also know. But being in the same boat is different from learning about the other boat. So I feel the world is on the right track. Women are collaborating as opposed to competing. For sure, there is healthy competition. I don't deny that. There is healthy competition and it should be there, because that's what brings out the best in you and that's what brings out the best in the people around you. So healthy competition is a must, but unhealthy competition is quite out of sight these days. And I love to see women collaborating, and I am happy to be a part of some of these platforms, and I want to do as much as I can when I am with other women and support them and get their support when I need it. Yeah.
Well said. You've really almost talked about everything that I also had in mind. But I just want to add one point back to about women just competing with each other. Okay, so for a very long time in history, women's main goal was to get men's attention. So whatever we did, in quotes, was to get their attention. And so when you're like sharing your your diet secrets and your facial care secrets with another woman, it's like, well, the man that you're trying to attract will just go for the other woman. But now that there are different layers and women are discovering themselves and they're peeling different layers of themselves, they realize that, you know what, there's so much more to me than a man. There's so much more to me than the attention of a man or attention of anybody, really. It's really about self-development and helping other people develop themselves. And yeah, so I think that's what is more important now for women: collaborate rather than compete. And whatever you're competing for, it really, really should not be for a man. Well, if that's your story, that's fine. But then, yeah, so I'm gonna move on to the last. Okay, thank you. Say something.
When it comes to attracting men, and you explained why women used to behave in a certain manner. So when we educated ourselves, when we elevated ourselves to a different level, that it was not just about beauty, there was so much more to our personality, and we were peeling off the layers of that onion, like you said. I think it has also helped us transfer that education to men. So now men also understand what they have to look for in a woman, and it's not just about your body shape or your body size or how fair you are or how slender you are. They are also looking for a different personality. What is it that's different about you, which comes from the psychological responses that you have? So I think ourselves, we have also educated the society and the way the society thinks. We have been able to change it to a certain extent, and we will be able to change it further. That's what I had to say.
Absolute spot on. Thank you so much for that contribution. So I'm going to move to the last question, okay, which is examine the importance of law designed to protect women and their communities. I'm going to let you start, then I would just contribute to that.
So when it comes to laws, the first thing that came to my mind was, the right to vote. Back to the early 1900s, women in certain countries did not even have the right to vote. I mean, can you imagine that? What could be the reason behind that? Are women not human beings? Do we not have the same government as men? Do we not eat the same food as men? I mean, what was so different that made the society think that women should not be voting and it should only be the men who should be voting? I mean, this is ridiculous. And it was Emmeline Parkhurst in the UK in 1918 who formed a group of other women called suffragettes. And they together were the ones who actually brought this point of women being given the right to vote in the UK. So what we call the developed countries, way back in the 1900s, even women in those countries did not have the right to vote. So it was a woman who actually had to stand up and bring about other women, bring together and speak up that we also need to vote. I mean, we have the same rights. And this gender inequality isn't a women's issue. It's actually a human issue. And if, again, we have a look at the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations, we would find that 11 of them out of 17 are related to gender-specific things, which again points out to the fact that gender inequality is an issue, is a huge issue, but it's not a women's issue. Please, let not anybody say that it's a women's issue, it's a human issue. So something as basic as having the right to vote, that also we did not have. And now we are having different laws. I don't know how it's about in Nigeria, but you have the law of inheriting your parental property. Okay, so when, you have the inheritance of the parental property and that will is written. Few years back, it was only the male child who was allocated that property when the parents died. And it was never the female child who was given a part of it. But later on, the law was changed to make sure that even the female child gets a part of it. Not only a part of it, the female child has the equal right as the male child on that property. So it is parental property. Why should that patriarchal concept come into play that the female child is not given the right? I mean, a child is a child, and we expect the same treatment from our parents, whether we are a male child or a female child of the family. So it's again about educating the women. They need to know what is right and what is wrong in the way they are being served or they are being treated. And they need to speak up for themselves. Because the Constitution was written several years back in the countries when they got their independence. And after that, there's so much that has been changed. The world has changed. And if there were some rights we did not have back then, and we realize that we need those rights now, we should be willing to come together and speak up, because together we bring a change.
Thank you so much for that perfect history lesson as well. I did a lot of history growing up as well, so I do know about the suffragettes. And then I just want to bring it home to Nigeria and how speaking up and creating women communities is so important in elevating our lives in general. Because if we do not speak up, no one, like literally no one, the men in power, the government, if we do not rally, if we do not speak up, if we do not cry out in rage of what's going on with us, like no one is really ready to just take on the charge that, you know what about this women? Because if we do not do it, no one is going to stand up for us. So we have to stand up for ourselves. We have to start looking at society, we have to start putting ourselves in political positions. We need to start putting ourselves out there and actually just raising our voices to the issues that really concern us, because this silence culture for a very, very long time has not been beneficial to us. It has literally made our lives very, very uncomfortable. Just, I think a year ago, there was a bill that was not passed in parliament in Nigeria. It's called the Sex for Grades. This is this is about the harassment and the sexual harassment that women face in universities in Nigeria. This has been going on for years, from my mom's generation to my sister's generation, now to my generation. And if we do not put an end to it now, no one is going to. Another one has been put in parliament now, and we hope and pray that it goes through. And we're going to fight, not just pray or not just talk, but we have to fight, because if we do not fight, if we do not speak up, no one is listening. So a lot of times, so that's why women's communities are so important. The little things that we take for granted or say it's not our concern. Oh, well, I've graduated from university, it doesn't concern me anymore. Your kids are going to go to the universities, and they would face these things. And why do you have to let this circle of motions of harassment just keep on going on? I know a lot of people, I didn't go through that, but I do know a handful of women who have to go through that throughout the university days, and that is not appropriate. And if we continue to ignore all these problems, we are still going to meet it in the future, as Nigerians would call it. So I think it's really important that we speak up. Yes, so those are my final thoughts. Thank you so much. Do you have anything to contribute to that? And we can call it a day.
It might be a repetition of what we said, but again, the most important thing that I would want to bring about this conversation that we had is speak up. Speak up, speak up, speak up, because you have this old adage. When you're a small baby, even your mother doesn't feed you until you cry. So only when you cry and you let your mother know that you're hungry, then only your mother feeds you. So imagine growing up as a human being, if you do not speak up what's bothering you, if you do not speak up for what's happening to you or what's being done to you and you think it's wrong, nobody cares, nobody is bothered. So speak up. Unless you speak up, the world won't know. And it's only when you speak up that you're able to attract support. And together, we win. Thank you.
Thank you for the last words. Together, we win. And this is part of the struggle. This panel is part of the ways that we're speaking up. I am so happy that you took out time to speak to me today. Thank you so much. So this is the end of the panel. Thank you very much for doing this. We really appreciate it. So yes, have a great day. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.